This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/mapperforward to find out how you can become a member today. Carlos de la Torre, welcome to the Mapper Forward podcast. It is wonderful to have you here, sir.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy.
We're going to have a conversation over the next few episodes about the coffee community pre-pandemic and during the pandemic in Mexico. We down?
Wow. Yeah.
What a subject, huh?
A little country.
Just a little speck on the earth. But I have had the pleasure of knowing a lot of people from the Mexican coffee community, having lived in San Diego. And we had your wonderful wife, Jerry Smith, on the podcast last year with the first episode in Spanish with Meli. And so this year, having taken a different approach to the podcast where we're breaking it up into a series of episodes, I really want to take the approach of understanding in different cultures in the coffee industry around the world what are different localized industries like now as we enter 3 years into this pandemic. Truth be told, the coffee industry wasn't in great condition before that. And I think a lot of people were deluding themselves into thinking everything was fine, but we were already headed for trouble. And the pandemic really pushed on some of the stress points that we were experiencing. And so this year we want to, on the podcast, really explore a lot of those local industries. And from the Global Coffee Town Hall, I loved so much of what you had to say. So I had to invite you to come and have a conversation with me one-on-one. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
So why don't you get us started by telling us who Carlos is and what you do?
What I do?
What don't you do?
Right now, most of my time is invested in the coffee shop I have with my wife, and also taking care of my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be really fast during the day, to have at least a few moments at the roastery, at the other two coffee shops. And also, I really love cooking. So at some point during the journey, I escape to home and cook for the night and then go back to the business. But that's my daily job.
And the businesses are Coffee con Jiribilla?
You know, in Mexico, it's pretty easy to have a new business. It's not like you need permission or maybe it's super expensive or something like that. I have, it's going to sound like a lot, but actually it's a super small company. I have the roastery with my wife, Café con Jiribilla. Mm-hmm. We have also the new coffee shop. It's Blanco Camellia. Mm-hmm. I opened a small spot to serve coffee more like in the downtown with two friends. That the name is Yonke. Yonke is like a junk jar, you know. Uh-huh. And I also have the long-lasting Café Avellaneda. It's turned 12 years last weekend.
Oh wow! Happy birthday!
Yeah, thank you. And we have like the cold brew brand also in production kitchen for the coffee shops. Mm-hmm. And I have this small project, it's very personal. I named it Ratio Rana. It's like a soft coffee subscription with different roasters of Mexico, where I taste the coffees and put down some recipes to send to the subscribers. It's very funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I also enjoy a lot competing and coaching people.
Now, give us a bit of history about your competition track record, because you didn't just like have a go at it. You won.
Yeah, yes. I started competing 12 years ago, actually. And I opened my coffee shop. The first 3 years, I was maybe in the last four spots of the ranking. It was fun.
Uh-huh.
Then I have enough luck and ability to win the Cup Taster Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed everything because that took me to the World Championship. I had a lot of experience. I started to roast and cup coffee daily. And that gives me a new perspective about the cup. So next time I compete, I won twice the Brewers Cup and then twice the Barista Championship. And the last year I competed in 2019, I won the Coffee Masters in Los Angeles.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Will you still compete?
Yeah, I'm actually not anymore the Mexican Barista Champion because now it's another barista, Jenny. She's the current champion. But
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't make it to the World Championship because of the COVID. So I'm going with her to Melbourne in September.
I'll get to see you and have a coffee with you, take you out to dinner.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah. Maybe we want to take also the little baby.
Oh, how will that be great? That will be awesome. So for this episode, we're going to focus on what the landscape was for the Mexican coffee industry pre-pandemic. And then in the next episode, we're going to start exploring how the pandemic has started to influence things for business owners on the consuming end, business owners on the producing end, and employees. So we're going to try and get as much insight as we can into that over the next few episodes. So talk to me about the landscape of, or what the state of the Mexican coffee industry was like before March 2020.
It was going perfect. I guess it was like Mexico started to shine a lot, thanks to barista competitions and Cup of Excellence, and also to the interaction between producers from other origins in Latin America, like Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama, having conversations with Mexican producers, and that took us to, like, maybe not the top of the iceberg, but it let us like gain 2 or 3 steps in the direction that coffee development were going. That this is why in 2019 I teamed up with Sammy, the coffee producer of the coffee I took to Boston, and we have excellent results, not just in the ranking, but he also sold the most of his coffee in the expo.
Wow.
Because the coffee was fantastic, and it was closer to the profile who was trend.
It was trending. So the flavor profiles that were trending.
Yes. So in that moment, I feel like the Mexican coffee started to scratch the surface of being in the trending coffees. And then a few companies start to export high quality Mexican coffees, and that totally turned the lights into Mexico. But then things got pandemic.
Yeah. Right. Just to
and
explore
for the baristas was a different story.
Yeah.
Because the barista wasn't maybe just in a crucial moment in which it's going to realize the value of service. You always hear about grumpy baristas, in that moment when the baristas couldn't have a customer in front of them was when we realized that we need to be charm, warm, and
hospitable.
an excellent, yeah, yes. And for the roasters, it was I can say the roasters were the most beneficial situation for them because the companies did develop new features.
What kind of features were they developing pre-pandemic?
The delivery logistics were not very like landed for most of companies,
Mm-hmm.
and in the conditions set the challenge of delivering fresh and quick and safe. So some roasteries didn't have before pandemic. I don't know, like hygiene protocols or
right. So food safety wasn't kind of on the radar before.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was starting to get on the radar.
Yes, and also it wasn't very common to have a web shop.
Right.
Now it's super common.
Yeah.
And also the roasteries can be like not worried about the freshness of coffee because it was crazy for some companies to always need to have fresh roasted coffee, and the delay in the shipments make the consumer have the necessity of drinking old coffee,
right.
1 month roasted coffee. Yeah, and the consumer discovered that it wasn't really bad. So
right.
now we can slow down the engine of production and take time to cup properly, maybe to hand sort some of the coffees and make a proper delivery.
Tell me, was there a focus starting to, like, were we shining a light in Mexico on the difference between commercial grade coffee and specialty coffee pre-pandemic? Were consumers understanding that there was a difference between those two markets?
Yes. It's very. The main distinction is the price. The price is way different. So that's the main characteristic that you can identify from specialty coffee. It's expensive because to keep the best beans in Mexico, we need to pay as much as the exporters. So for us, it's kind of hard, but the people appreciate it. And the commercial coffee, at least before pandemic, it used to be very low price. Right now, it's weird because the coffee has got more expensive, and at some point, some specialty coffee was at the same price that the commodity.
And we're going to talk about how the pandemic has influenced that in the coming episodes. One thing I want to ask you before we do wrap this episode up is, what do you think were the challenges that the Mexican coffee community was experiencing pre-pandemic? If you had to pick three. Like, what was the main one you think producers were experiencing?
Producers had the main concern was Roya. The black, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The coffee rust.
And the low prices.
Right.
The leaf rust and the low prices. Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? Were you as a roaster? I know that there are, because we used to sell elixir into Mexico, and the taxes were incredible to get coffee into Mexico.
Yes.
Has that changed? Is it still very expensive to get coffee from outside of Mexico?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
most of the
it's
coffee you sell is Mexican?
I only sell Mexican coffee.
Okay, great.
In the most of the roasteries,
Yeah.
you can count maybe 10 roasteries who has maybe foreign coffees, and most of them are like in the frontier, like in Tijuana and Chiapas, maybe. But
Right.
no.
Because they're so close to the border.
Yeah.
They're in Tijuana, so maybe they go over and get some, but it's not a common thing because
Yes.
because the taxes are so high to get them in there.
And it's a funny thing that roasted coffee does not has this tax that any product has.
Right.
The, for example, you buy a soda and it has 1.16% taxes, and coffee don't. Yeah.
Coffee's 30, I think, isn't it?
What?
The tax is 30% on coffee.
No, on coffee? For foreign coffees? Yeah, I don't know.
To bring in. So when we were importing Elixir into 30% at the border, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's really, really big, which makes it a little bit prohibitive because then, you have to pass those prices on. So it's very difficult for anyone that's dealing with foreign coffees.
Yes, and you don't have fresh coffees. You have in the same table Mexican fresh coffees and foreign expensive old coffees.
That are, 6 months old or 8 months old or whatever. Right. So tell me, what are some of the challenges pre-pandemic that you think business owners on the consuming end were experiencing?
Maybe it wasn't actually a problem, but a consequence of our own development. As a business owner of a coffee shop and a roastery, you started to deal with experienced customers. They used to be baristas. They are home baristas. They have sometimes they have more experience than your own baristas.
Yeah.
So it was like, they realized that my coffee was underdeveloped.
Really?
Yes, and in the coffee shop, there were like customers saying, "Hey, you didn't even pre-wet that bloom."
Wow.
It's weird because the coffee culture expanded in Mexico, and that's good because I used to think that the next step for coffee in Mexico was the consumer taking the coffee in its hands, because in Mexico the most of the coffee shops are very small. The specialty coffee shops are maybe 20 meters.
Wow. 20 square meters. Wow, that's tiny.
Yes, the most of them. And the lucky ones, maybe a bigger ones, 100 square meters.
Wow.
They're small. So we cannot, for example, my coffee shop only had 12 seats.
Right.
So I only fit 8 people, and that's not pretty good business. So I needed the people to start taking the coffee and taking it home.
Takeaway.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what we were struggling to
develop.
Feel the expectations of the customer, because we have a very, very trained customer. Yeah.
What would you say are the challenges that baristas were having pre-pandemic in Mexico?
Maybe the main challenge was to make the decision between pursuing a career in coffee or maybe stepping aside and going for something else.
Because of pay, do you think? Or was it because of career satisfaction?
Uh, I'm pretty sure it's about the payment.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened in most of the countries. Barista is like a job for young adults, maybe teenagers,
Yeah.
and some at some point you need to have something more stable. I think that baristas before pandemic were trying to figure out how to solve this problem by themselves, but the pandemic turned out to be like a catalyzer for that.
Yeah, right. So I think we get an understanding of kind of where things were at pre-pandemic. In the next episode, we're going to start examining how the Mexican coffee industry experienced the beginnings of the pandemic and how it stressed on that. And then we'll explore how that evolved over the last couple of years. How does that sound?
Okay.
Great.
Sounds
Awesome.
nice.
We'll see you in the next episode, Carlos.
See you.
Peace, love, and peanut butter, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.